We have the pleasure of having this event being moderated by Professor Modupe Akinola. Modupe Akinola is an assistant professor of management at Columbia Business School. Prior to pursuing a career in academia, Professor Akinola worked in professional services at Bain & Company and Merrill Lynch. Professor Akinola examines how organizational environments characterized by deadlines, multitasking, and other attributes such as having low status can engender stress, and how this stress can have a spillover effect on performance. In addition, Professor Akinola examines the strategies organizations employ to increase the diversity of their talent pool and the biases that affect the recruitment and retention of minorities in organizations. Professor Akinola earned a BA and MA in social psychology from Harvard University. She also holds an MBA and PhD in organizational behavior from Harvard Business School. So let's thank Professor Akinola. I have the distinct honor of introducing our guest speaker for today, Ms. Ursula Burns, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Xerox, an individual who overcame the obstacles of race, gender, and class to become the leader of a great company. Ursula grew up in the rough public housing projects on the Lower East Side of New York City, went to NYU Polytechnic to become a mechanical engineer, and received a master's in mechanical engineering from Columbia University.
Woo! The real
See you. She joined Xerox as a summer intern and never left, obviously. I won't detail the complete rise at Xerox, except to say that she has worked in just about every area of the business: product development and manufacturing, supply chain operations and research and development, marketing and distribution, both domestically and globally. She's currently leading a major transformation of Xerox. Long known for its success in document technology, Ursula is now leading the charge in a transformative effort to expand the firm's focus to business process management. These efforts include the successful acquisition of ACS, a leading business outsourcing firm. In researching the full capabilities of the new Xerox, I came to be amazed at both the depth and breadth of business processes Xerox designs and operates. Customer call centers, accounts payables and receivables, HR benefits programming, IT infrastructure and networks, health integration, information exchanges, and so much more. It should be of note that as a result of the successful integration, Xerox revenues in business process outsourcing and information technology are now larger than those from its document technology business. Ursula has a well-earned reputation of being a fearless and charismatic leader, an open and candid communicator, and an individual who always speaks her mind, particularly to those in power. I believe that we are in for quite a discussion. I hope you're joining me in welcoming Ms. Burns.
It really is a pleasure to have you here and a privilege.
I think we have to. Can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
Yeah. Okay. Unfortunately. Can you hear us now?
Is this better?
Better.
Okay, so it really is a privilege and an honor to have you here. And I think some of the students chose me to do this interview because they know in the classroom I like to keep it real. So I want to prepare you that I'm going to keep it real. And one of the first questions I have for you is, statistically speaking, there's probably a less than 1% chance, given some of the things we've talked about, African American, women, whatever, that you'd rise to the position that you rose to. I want you to take us to the moment where you felt like, I maybe could be CEO of this company one day.
Well, there are two moments. One was a ridiculously stupid moment, and the other one was the real moment. When I joined the company, I actually said, yeah, I could run this place one day. But after about 5 or 10 years, I realized that it was probably, that was a ridiculous statement to have made at the time that I made it. I had no idea what running the company meant. I didn't even know what the structure of a company was. Now you guys have that. You can Google it and, see everything about company structures, et cetera. When I was growing up and when I entered the work environment, we didn't have these social media sites or any kind of a real structured internet system, that kind of stuff. So if I wanted to know anything about a company, I had to go to the library and kind of dig up things, and I wasn't really too into that. So I actually just thought that I was smart. I knew that I was smart, and I thought that I was different enough to make a difference. And what I wanted to do after coming off the perch and saying I wanted to run the place, what I wanted to do was just do a good job. And I say this a lot, and people say, can't be what you wanted to do. And what I wanted to do was do a good job. I was a very well-trained engineer, first at Brooklyn Poly and then here. And I was really precise and good at that field, what I was doing. And I wanted to just do that really, really well and become known for that without understanding that somewhere else in the company where other people were doing other things. They were, selling things and financing, et cetera. I really didn't get interested in that until probably 10 years after I walked in the door and realized, somebody told me, actually my husband now, said, you should probably get out of this lab because there's more happening in the company than that. And the second time was after I was chosen to be the executive assistant to the CEO of the company. Now, the executive assistant, when I was asked to be the executive assistant, I thought was a job that was beneath me. So my response was, do you understand that I have a master's degree in mechanical engineering? Don't you understand who I am? And his response was, I understand totally who you are, and you should probably consider this job. So when I took the job working for him, I realized what his job was. I got to see a lot of the leadership team of the company, and that was the second time and a real time when I said, yeah, I could definitely do this. Now, whether it would work out or not, because it's timing, there's so many things that have little to do with how well you do and whether or not you actually can sit in the seat. I just said, okay, I don't know, I can't fix any of those things, but I can make sure that I'm prepared in the broadest sense. And I was fortunate enough to just follow directions very well. They said, go here. I said, okay, I'll go. They said, do this. I said, okay, I'll do that. And every time I engaged, I just engaged assuming that this was the most important thing I had to do at the time. It's actually something that's changed quite a bit in companies. I think we're getting it back a little bit. When you hire you guys, highfalutin engineers and any kind of an MBA student, the first thing I do if somebody comes into my company who's what we call a band A, they must talk to me. And if the discussion is about getting real, as you said, which is, no, you're not going to come here and run the place when you walk in the door. No, so I want to hear your opinion, we want to hear your opinion, you want to engage, but you have to do something and earn a position to have a voice before you can have a voice. And your pedigree, your school degree, your whatever the heck it is, the papers that you wrote, don't really carry a whole lot past getting you in the door. And then in the door, you have to kind of start all over again and start playing a whole different game all over again. And when I say game, I don't mean a game to try to position yourself. I mean a game to do your job. And so I actually ended up lucky. I ended up lucky, a good guys, generically men and women, good positions, and just this ability that I had to work, this ability to work really hard and stay really focused.
Well, they actually say that luck favors the prepared. And
That's what-
so
yeah,
in a
that's what
lot
they
of
say.
ways you were prepared, lucky, and really smart to be able to make it this far. And you were groomed. You had these great mentors. And so certainly there were some moments close to when you were, being appointed CEO that you might have had some doubts or some fears or some concerns.
Fears, yeah, to this day. I wake up most days unsettled, for sure.
What are some of the things
But never
that you're upset-
doubts.
Never doubts.
Yeah, very rarely doubts. Most of my doubts are around my family, around my kids, around my close family. My niece is here, so raise your hand. She's a Barnard student. So there's I have a circle of people that I care immensely about, that are my responsibility. And that's my brother and my sister, their families, and my kids and my husband, and our dog. So most of the time I have doubts is about them and whether or not I'm doing the best for them or they're being prepared, the lessons are right, etc. The rest at work is very rarely doubt. It's more stress and nervousness and unsettled. I never wake up, ever. I do go to sleep sometimes feeling as though I did a reasonably good job. But most of the time, by the time I wake up, all of that assurance is going out the window. And I start again saying, oh my goodness, there's so much to do, so many decisions to be made, so much possibility for succeeding, so much possibility for therefore screwing up. And so, it's this cycle that's pretty wearing on you.
And how do you manage that?
I take it every day at a time. I was speaking to some students earlier, to some people earlier, and I was talking about what I care about and how I actually manage my life and day. And I said that not everybody can do this. Obviously, you can't do this. I'm 53, so I think I've earned my way to the point where I can dismiss certain things. And how I manage my life is I actually have a box the size of this table of things that are in, and that is managed very tightly, and everything that's out, if I can get a moment to think about it, fine. If not, fine. It's somebody else's problem. The box is big, by the way. This is not a, it's not a, just, my little box. It's a big box. It's the world, it's, the economy, it's energy. There's a lot of things that I worry about. But there's a whole bunch of stuff that I don't worry about. I don't worry about, some of these crazy lives that people have. They're entertaining, but it's fine if they want to do that. I don't worry about beliefs that are odd to me. I think people have the right to have those beliefs, but I try to keep it real and keep it close to home, and that's my way of dealing with just the unbelievably large amount of information, overwhelming information that you can get. I do not have a Facebook account. Now people, how can you not have a Facebook account? Because I think it's nobody's damn business. Most of what I do, I don't Twitter or tweet or whatever you call it. By the way, I'm technically, I think, pretty savvy. I do everything else that you could possibly imagine. But and this is not necessarily for everyone. I just think that there's a way that I protect myself from huge distractions and from noise signals. And that the way that this may not, like I said, this is not the most real way to live, but this is the way I live. I just decide that there are things that are important to me, and if it's not, it's kind of somebody else should handle it.
Now, you mentioned the economy is one of the things in your big box, and you are an advisor to the president. You talk to him about issues related to the economy and other things. What do you think is going well? What do you think could be improved? What are some of the things that we need to do better in this administration?
Yeah, I'm going to actually separate the discussion from this administration, because I don't think I'm an advisor to the president. I think the president uses me. And I think he actually does have advisors, and I'm not one of them. But I mean that in a very positive way. I mean, he has people who are expert at things that he actually calls advisors. He uses me to get insight on things that I care about that happen to be aligned with things that are important to him. And that happens to be trade and education, a big deal on that. Energy is another one. But other areas, he doesn't call me to ask about what he should do in Israel or none of that stuff. I don't have any opinion about that. So what do I think is going well in the economy and in the world? And then the reason why I'm separating it is that the president, as great as any president is, as powerful as they are, they have 8 years, if they're lucky, 4 years if they're not, to affect an economic and ecological and system that is centuries in the making and centuries to go. So he's just a point in time, and so I'm going to talk about the sum of all the times up till now, particularly in America, but it's actually playing out more loudly around the world, and it's going to hit America soon, and it's starting to hit. We have a system in this country that prepared us for greatness. We raised our kids, set up our institutions, set up our financial structure for greatness and for leading and for having people serve us. We have a structure that calls for that. So we separate. By the way, some of the people who serve are in this country. A large number of people who serve are in this country. Some of them come from other countries to this country to serve, but some of them are just born in an economic situation that puts them in a serving way. And generally, that's balanced fairly well for the people who are served. For the people who are serving, I probably think that they're being screwed all the time, right? But so this balance works pretty well. Everybody's pretty happy, and the stock market goes up, and everybody goes to school, or the people who count and vote, the 20% of the population who actually participate in that part of the system. What's happened is that's been disrupted. It's been disrupted because the world didn't stand still. The world said, I like the way that these people live in this other place. It's pretty cool. They have roads, the lights are lit, you know, it's lit. I call it the rule of law and paved roads. We have them. We have running water generally, and we have a system that actually works fairly well. And people look at it and say, this is a good idea. There's a lot of stuff that's bad about it, by the way. But it's a good idea, and people have worked hard to try to get there. And in 7 billion people in the world, billions of them, well, 500 million of them are getting there. They're not all here. And what happens now is that we have places in the world that you can actually get the great things from, either talent or energy or ideas, whatever, technology, that are not here. And that's disrupting the economic system that we have. And as it disrupts that system, we are putting more and more people into the buckets that were already here, but they were not the most pleasant buckets. They were the buckets back. And if you were ever up front, and now you have to go back, it's horrible. If you're back trying to come up, you got it, right? So that's where I started. You started poor, and you're working up, and you say, I can do it a little bit. Anything is a little bit better than where you were before. If you were there, and now you're back, it's a hateful place to be. So we have an entire infrastructure built around a certain pay structure, a living structure, that you can arbitrage around the world pretty easily. And we've disrupted the entire system in this country and in most of the developed countries around the world. And now the question is, so now what? So one discussion is, government, please fix it. I need Social Security, unemployment, education, all of the stuff, health care that you need that was like it was before. And I really can't pay much more for it. And the government that says, I understand, it depends on who's in government. I understand that you need that, the current government. I understand that you need that, and we're going to figure out a way to get it. And the rhetoric today is we're going to get it from all the people who have it. And we're going to give it to, now, the good news about it is that if you took it all from all the people who have it in this country, you still couldn't solve the problem. But and that's the bad news of it. But this problem is a real one. It's a real one. We're going to have to actually step back and understand what do we trade off? Do we allow people to live until they're 100 years old and be kept alive for that long with medical technology that we can't afford? Do we allow that? Now, this sounds like a horrible thing to say in a country like this. We never have discussions like that. Do you allow people, do you fix the schools? Do you fix the public schools and tax to fix them? And people say, well, yeah, you should fix the public schools, but you can't raise my taxes. So there's a whole cycle that we're going to have to go through to reset ourselves for greatness. Because we were great before, and if we want to be great, again, we're going to have to invest like we did before, like we were when we were a developing nation. This is my opinion, right? So there is a huge push that we're going to have to do, a significant amount of rebalancing that we're going to have to do. The people who have, you guys, me, are going to have to give significantly more than you ever thought you would have to give and that you think is fair to help balance it again. And the people who don't have are going to have to actually not get as much as they want for us to balance it again. And the only way for it to work is for us to literally, I think, recognize that you just can't continue to scream at each other and say, you guys give more, you guys want less, which is what we're doing today. And if we do that, then fine, it'll be fine. What I say to my kids and my nieces all the time, is, I'll be dead well before this blows up. And this is why you guys have to worry about it. Because I'm 53, 20 years, we're going to be fine. 25 years, it's going to get hot, crowded, and flat. It's already flat, right? Hot, crowded, and more dirty in the next couple of years if we don't actually face the problems that we have. And I think part of the challenge is that some of the leaders, political and business, are counting on the fact that they'll be gone well before the problem actually blows up. And I just can't. I have kids, and they'll have kids, and I'm actually worried about them. So.
Now, who are some
Preaching.
leaders that you admire, that you've learned the most from?
Yeah, my mother was probably the person I learned the most from. And she would not be considered a leader by most of the people in the world, but she was amazing, just an amazing woman. Very focused, extremely balanced, extremely clear. And she actually believed that there were rules that were black and white. Nowadays, you can't ever say that to kids. Everything is gray. They have, options. You should think about things. Her approach was pretty clear. If you shouldn't steal. You shouldn't lie. You shouldn't cheat. And you could say, but there were circumstances. And she said that's secondary to the point, which is that you shouldn't. She was very, very clear. She actually set priorities that were amazing, and her priorities were not about her personal success. It was all about her kids and about the circle of things that she held dear to her. She didn't just speak it, she actually invested that way. She sent my brother, my sister, and I to school, to Catholic schools, and that were $650 a year, and she made $4,000 a year. And that's the most she ever made was $4,400. And my brother, my sister, and I went to schools that were it's kind of like sending us to Harvard, right, and making $75,000. I mean, it was amazing. And she was very clear on what our jobs were and how we should live. And she never spoke to us about money, ever, ever. Her thing was, you have to go to college. And I applied to college and didn't have an idea about how to pay for it. I didn't even think about paying for it because she never talked about that part of it. Just kind of, and then after a while you say, my God, these things cost a lot of money. How the hell are we going to pay for that? She said, don't worry about it. It'll all work out. Actually, it ended up working out. But her thing was, you have to be a good person. And her thing to me was, and she says this to all of us, a couple of statements she'd say. One was, you have to live your life and give back more than you take away. That's her definition of success. Give back. You have to leave in the world more than you take away. This is a burden that's amazing. Right? And I was raised as a Catholic girl, and so I actually think about this a lot. It's it would be easy if I didn't think about it. I'd have a lot more fun. So that was one. And the other thing she always said to me was, this joy you feel is life. I have a plaque made for it. And what she meant by that is, this is it. There is no other, this is it. There's no other place to go that's better. You make it here. You do it, so this place that you are, make the best of it, and then you go to the next place, make the best of it. Don't keep looking for the greener grass. Strive for it, work for it, but don't minimize the things that you can learn from where you are today. So she was amazing, absolutely amazing. She died many, many, many years ago, well before any of our kids were born, and so she didn't get to see, well before we were successful, which is unfortunate. The next person I can say who is still a really big impactor on my life is my husband. And he's odd in that he's a researcher, and he's a physicist and a researcher, but he has the ultimate good soul. He's just a really nice guy. And he, mourns for the right things and roots for the right things. He's just a really good guy. He's also smart and all that stuff, but he has the softest heart that I've ever seen. And then the next person is Vernon Jordan, who's been a godfather of mine for a long time. And in the time since I've become an executive in the company, he's been probably the most consistent professional watcher of me, and therefore the most consistent professional teacher of mine. And he's pretty clear. And he's I don't know if people know Vernon Jordan. He's a really big black guy, and he's known for being extremely blunt. And he calls me on the carpet positively and negatively like nobody else can, and does it exactly in the right way, at the right timing, and it's just perfect. He's really good. And another person who I spent a lot of time with, I was speaking to somebody earlier, was Ken Chenault. And Ken, I actually don't know him as well personally. I know him fairly well personally, but I don't know him as well personally as the previous three. But I'm on his board, on the American Express board, and I've been able to watch for 7 years this guy run a company in a way that I go to the board meetings, and I'm supposed to help him, but I actually spend most of my time learning from him, because he's such a solid manager of the board, manager of his team, leader of the company. He's very calm, extremely consistent. He's really a solid leader, and I keep trying to find some big flaw, and there's not really one there. So I actually study him a lot. He's so much unlike me. I'm well on the edge. I'm always kind of bouncing back and forth. I'm a really type 10, A-type person. My team sees me sweat. I tell them what I'm worried about. I tell them what I'm not. It's hard. You look at him and you say, "Man, things are going great. Things must be going great." Things are always going great because Ken is always great. So there's a good balance there that I think we have to. So I actually like him. There's a lot of other people as well, my kids. So.
Well, it sounds like you've learned from Ken, Vernon Jordan, your husband, your mother, and we have in this audience people who are here who are at Columbia Business School to learn how to be on the board eventually of American Express. If you were on the faculty of Columbia Business School, what do you think the critical skills are that we need to be teaching our MBA so that they can be more effective and achieve the many things that you have, the many things that they aspire to achieve?
Yeah, one thing, I mean, the subjects you have to learn, right? So I always say to people who walk into my office who say they want to be me is that you got to be good at something well before you're good at well before you're average at everything, because that's what a CEO is, a little bit above average at everything. But you have to be good, really, really good at something. So whatever it is that you do, you literally have to get comfortable with it. You have to become really good at it. And for me, it was engineering. I'm really good at this, so if I walk in today to a line of business that is into a lab or into a manufacturing site, I can relax, and I can actually just hang out. There's not a lot of, you need at least one place in the company that you can do that. If I go into a bond rating meeting, I'm not relaxed, if because I didn't do that stuff, and so I'm pretty good at it now, but it's not my home base. So first is be good at something. So whatever they teach you here, whatever you're learning, marketing or finance or business, this big thing, be good at that and find some place to make your mark. But then everything else has nothing to do with what people generally teach in courses. Everything, one of the things that I will tell you, humility, one of the most amazing things that you can learn in life, but definitely in business, is humility. And it is totally counter to the titles that they give us. Chief Executive Officer, the chief, I'm the chief. So, right? I have security, I have people who travel with me, I have a plane, everything that you get when you get to this position actually pushes you away from the one thing that you have to have. And that's humility. And this ability to understand that you have to learn something every single day, and that nothing gets done. This is another, without people. And if you can't get them to buy, I tell you what, people are manipulative, mean thing. I'm telling you, if you piss them off, they will figure out a way to make you fail. And by the way, you deserve it. Now, unfortunately, most people don't really connect, and it takes a long time, right? So by the time the people kind of rise up against you in a way that workers can, not unionizing, but just not working really hard or not following the direction or not buying into the strategy. By the time that happens, you're generally gone, right? So you very rarely catch a bad CEO in their time. It usually comes in the guy after it. But if you can't figure out a way to understand that people have lives, that they come into work every day, they have doubts, they have families, they have passions, that they are just like you, or vice versa, and you can engage them in some way, then there's no doubt about it, your job will be really hard. It'll be really hard. You may succeed in the short term, but in the long term, you're gonna die. So the second thing is this whole idea about understanding that people should talk, people should have an opinion, people should you want that. That's what you want. And you count on that to make the enterprise great. So humility and the fact that it's all about them. It's not about you. And it's all about them, the customers. It's all about them, the clients. It's all about them, the shareholders. It's really not about you, the individual. You just happen to be the orchestrator for the next 10 years. And then there's another orchestrator, another one, and then they get together. And then the third thing is that you do business in the world. You don't do business in the United States. And this is a big thing for U.S. Companies and students to learn. And it's interesting that the world is so much different in view, in emphasis, in everything than here. And we're kind of a small 300 million people, big economic power, but 300 million people in the world. And most people, I've lived in London, I traveled all over the world continuously. Most people approach their day differently than we do.
Yeah.
And it's really, I mean, when you're trying to design products or sell marketing campaigns, something simple, simple things like, it's how you're going to package something, things that we would consider are just normal. Of course they would do that. The answer is they would never do that because they don't have, or they do have, or whatever. So this idea that the world is big and different is a big deal.
That needs to be captured while you're here in a lot of ways. Now, in a lot of different ways, people here are, not in a lot of different ways, many are trying to figure out what next. They're here at Columbia Business School looking for jobs, wanting to know what should we follow, what is the path. And it's interesting because about 50% of first years at least, go for your traditional consulting or banking or things like that. In terms of jobs and where you see the most growth, what is one of those areas that you think is an underappreciated area that people should be thinking about and looking into?
Engineering, making things.
Says the engineer.
By the way, I actually think that there is huge opportunity in law, in business, in banking, in consulting. I think that's all fine. But if you think about this, there's a great guy who I know, his name is Dean Kamen, who did he did the Segway and the portable dialysis machine and the client, he's an amazing guy. First, and he said, if we don't watch it, we're going to have all these masters, but no businesses to administer. Right? And it's really important that we understand that in order that we have to create value somewhere. It doesn't have to be like making a table or this stand, but something has to be created before we can actually law it or manage it or something. So I think we have to get back to some of the basic things. If you think about the biggest problems that we have in the world, potable water, distribution of energy and food, the sustainability of the earth, you need a scientist, an engineer, a technologist, a mathematician, somebody to start working on these problems. As much and as valuable as the Masters in Business Administration is, they can think of the idea, they can't implement the damn thing. So we need some people who can work on that. So I actually think is a huge pull in the world for, we know it, right? 150,000 jobs every 6 months go unfilled, paying $70,000 a year in this country, totally because we have absolutely no source for the people. We just can't find them. And the government has closed the door and said, if you get your master's degree or PhD in these fields, we're going to send you home. Thank you very much. We're going to send you home. So we are, we shop around, we ship the jobs all over the place to get the problem solved. There's a lot of work to try to fix that problem. So that's one area that I think. Outside of that, I say to everybody, I don't care what you do, make sure you love it. Study what you love. And I have two examples. I have a son who is he's the Bean Burns child. My husband is a physicist, I'm an engineer, my son is an engineer. He went to MIT, he did exactly what we would all say, we love you, child, you did. And I have a daughter who is, she's also a Bean Burns child, and two nieces who are Burns Noyle children. These kids are brilliant. My daughter's brilliant at math, and these other two, they're all brilliant. None of them want to be engineers. So, it's kind of like, what the hell do we do? But they're going to pursue things that they really love. And if you do that, and I tell you, it's a big deal. If you do that, then I think you can make a difference in the world. Right? In the world. And in the world may be like to your family. It could be your community, but make a difference. So first find something to do. I think that for people coming out of schools like this, finding a job is not going to be your problem. It's going to be finding the right job over time. It may take you like a month, but you'll find a job. And you'll all go to the traditional places. You'll go to the Bains and the McKinseys and to the banks. And some of you will come to companies and work in strategy, basic tech companies and work in strategy. You'll do startups or venture capital, those kinds of things. And that will be the start of your journey. Because I doubt seriously, particularly for MBA students, that you're going to go to a place and end up there. Yeah. Very, very likely. Technologists actually do it more than, they stick more than MBA students. So find a place that you can actually kind of spread your wings, that you can practice being a human being. You can have an opinion, that you can say stuff, that you can practice being a human being. You can have a life. and that you can actually contribute to the company as well. And if you love it, stay. If you don't love it, then you go find another job in another field,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera.
Now, you've clearly found something that you love, and you've had the support of your family, which you've mentioned a couple of times to make it happen. But I'm sure it's been tough, and there have been some challenges. And so we want to understand how you've made it work. This idea of work-life balance, family, getting it right. How have you made it work? What would you have done differently?
Oh, yeah. I mean, first thing I would have done differently was had more kids, which is interesting. I had 2 children, and I would have had probably 2 more. Yeah, I know. I agree. Whoever who did the whistle. They're good. At this age,
Yeah.
it's perfect. I mean, they're you know, I'm sure that there are people who don't have perfect kids, but it's good. They actually, you know, you keep them close. They, you know, don't get too confused with you. You don't get too confused with them, and at the end of the day, they turn out to be okay people. And it's a perfect time with them, because they actually, when you hear the statement "keep you young," it's not about like keep you young, like, you know, laughing. It's just about perspective and just feeling like energetic about life and the future, et cetera, et cetera. So I would have had more kids. But when it comes to work, you know, how do I keep it? First of all, I have a support system that's amazing. I have a sister that is amazing. My sister, her whole family is our family, you know, my brother and I's family. And so she kind of takes care of us, makes sure that we have, she's had her own troubles, and my sister was a wild kid, but she grew up to be a really good supporter of our family. And when I lived in Rochester, which I lived for a long time, I traveled incessantly. And between her and my husband, we raised our kids. And it was really good that we had this ability to had this person who I trusted just because she was next to me all the time, that could help with raising my kids. That was really good. The other thing is I have a great husband. And for women who don't have great husbands, find another one. For women who are looking for husbands, find a good husband, and vice versa. If you're a male, and you know, and I don't mean that he's like this. He doesn't. My husband is really odd. He's a scientist. He's a great guy. He's just different. You know, his rhythm is different, but he's very good. The things that are important to me, you know, the values that I have are the values that he has, and vice versa. We would go about things very differently, but we don't stray that far apart. So that makes it really easy and comfortable. And I work for a phenomenal company.
Yeah.
I work for a phenomenal company. This company has gone through good, bad, good, bad. At the end of the day, there are certain things that never change at Xerox. And one is that they value me for me, and I value you for you, and I'll value you for you. And by the way, you don't look anything like me or act anything like me. It's therefore a very difficult place to manage, right? Because, you know, we have my management team. My CFO is an Italian from Italy. The head of my technology business is a Portuguese guy from Portugal. The head of my services business is a Mormon. We have it all. You know, my CTO is a Belgian woman. We have it all. Different languages, different ages, different cadences. But we have since 1906, since the time this company was formed, we operated with difference. And difference now is the way that we operate. So it's really easy to kind of enter our company. So I benefited from the fact that I could enter. When I joined Xerox, if you look back at my pictures, you would not have hired me. I was an unhireable person. I dressed like they did in that time, in the 80s. I had huge amount of hair, you know, I spoke faster than I do today, with more of a dialect than I do. It was odd. And all they cared about was the fact that I was a good engineer. They kept me out of the public for a long time. It took a couple of years before they let me out the lab. But it was, you're a good engineer, and we have this really big problem, so I'm going to give you this big problem. I was absolutely amazed. I had a lab. I got my own lab. I got a technician working for me, and I would go in every day. And sometimes I would look around and say, is anybody going to kind of manage me? And they did manage me, but it was like, I'm not going to manage your engineering. We hired you to do that. And I got kind of rounded out on the edges, but I have a great company, and it allowed me to kind of settle in, to a grown-up Ursula in a way that I didn't have to shed everything. I didn't have to kind of, transform myself into a white male. I didn't have to like country music. I didn't have to, do all of the things that I just didn't want to do. So I actually was able to be me, and that was the most amazing thing, the biggest, and I got opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. I would always be amazed. I was like, they said, go to Europe and run the European mid-range business for me. And I said, me? They said, yeah. Pack up your family and go. So I packed up my family, and we found a house, and we lived there. And I would call back and say, guys, I'm here. They said, we know you're here. We know you're there. We see the results. We're watching the results. We get reports. But it's a great place. Landing in a great company was amazing for me. And then I had a lot of people who sponsored me, who mentored me, people who just took care. So how I did it was just by taking advantage of the fact that I was lucky. And I mean lucky in the broadest way. The most, I was lucky. I had a great mother. I was lucky. I had a great company. I was lucky. But I wasn't obviously only lucky. You work hard for it. So it was good.
Now, as you know, this session has been sponsored by the Black Students Association, the BBSA, as well as the Columbia Women in Business. And I've heard you quoted as saying that you were born with 3 strikes against you: race, class, and gender. And there are many people in here who are in a similar situation.
Have at least 2.
The what?
The class part, I'm not sure about. But.
What advice would you give in terms of navigating those 3 strikes?
You know what's interesting? I actually say that to force a discussion. First about these things that we call strikes, and Shelley called obstacles. I wrote it down here because I want to remember to talk about it. These are not obstacles. Think about it. I mean, Xerox or the United States has millions of engineers. How many black female engineers are there? Not a lot. The United States has 500 Fortune 500 CEOs. There's only one black. So what I mean by this is that it's an obstacle when people look at it, and people will categorize it, as a strike. Obviously, I didn't wake up and say, oh my God, I have a strike, I'm a woman. I have a strike, I'm black. I mean, not at all. What I found out was that it was actually not that much a strike. It was structurally a strike, obviously. But I had all of the tools, fortunately, to make the strike into a home run, like a hit. And if you could figure out a way to not get kind of wrapped up around the things that you are as a burden. I love the fact that I'm a black woman. I think it's good. I was saying to the smaller group earlier that I became the CEO, and when I became the CEO, I took over from a woman who was phenomenal, amazing, remarkable. Her name is Ann Mulcahy. She was great. She was a great teacher. And she left the company, even though we were still struggling, in a really good state for me. I mean, so I didn't have to worry about whether we could make the payroll or whether the culture was right. She did all the unglorious heavy lifting, right? So that I walk in and I can actually go buy ACS, and people are like, oh, great thing. I'm like, if we didn't have the money to do it, I wouldn't have been able to do it, right? And she did most of that work for us and gave us that flexibility. When I walked in, I was made the CEO. The board had to make me the CEO. And I remember saying, as I said to the earlier group, one thing that Ken Chenault told me this as well. He said, whatever you're going to do, if it's really kind of crazy, do it early. Because they can't fire you right when you walked in, right? So it'd be really a bad thing if the board made you the CEO and then 6 months later said, we made a really big mistake. We're going to move it. By the way, obviously you don't play the game that way. You don't say, oh, I can run amok. But what you can do is actually, people are ready for change when change happens, and they're ready for change when things are bad. There are 2 things. So when you make a change, when the CEO changes, people are sitting there going, something's going to happen.
Yep.
So don't waste it. Make something happen good, obviously. And then when things are really bad, people expect you to change this. The hardest time to change is when everything is going just fine. So at the time at the company, when I walked into the company as CEO, I had a great team. That was done by Ann. Ann, and then Ann and me at the end, because I knew I was going to be CEO. She knew I was going to be CEO, so we made a lot of the decisions together. I had a really solid board. The strategy was pretty good. And we knew that we had assets that we were not kind of operating as broadly as we could. And so the question was for me was, and I had 2 years to think about this, how do you operate these assets that we have that no one else can claim? How do we put them together and make them better? And this is when we went into services. So early on, I was able to kind of step out of the box because people expected me to step out of the box. So these obstacles, I say, use them to your advantage. If you're the only, one of the things, I tell you, I was not the smartest person at Xerox, but people knew who I was because, one, I spoke up, and because when I stood up, I was the only one who looked like me in the audience. So they said, oh, it's that woman, that person again. You know, I remember her from the last time. And by the way, I mean, obviously it's getting harder. So here's where we're getting more and more women and more African Americans, Hispanics, all over the place. But when you are alone and you're good and fairly confident, shame on you if you don't take advantage of it as an advantage, not as a disadvantage. By the way, I didn't think about this when I was growing up. I didn't think about it this way. But as I got older, it was very clear that the reason why they knew who I was not only because I was smart, because there was a lot of smart people, but because I was smart and different. And so smart and different, you say, well, if that can help you there, where else can it help you? Right?
Now, you mentioned Anne Mulcahy, and with the smaller group, you told us a little bit about a meeting that you had with her discussing how you measure your success or how you think about it. I was hoping you'd share that with the larger group because I think it was a really, really important point.
Yeah, we're talking about balance and how just the burden that I think women in particular, but now more and more young people of any gender go through, right? So they get money, you get a career. First of all, you do school, you get a career, you get money. So everything is pretty good. So you get this job. You try to keep fit, but you blow that. There'll be a time when you blow that. I see a lot of women, it kind of goes to hell in a handbasket. It starts out really good, but then it goes to hell in a handbasket. And you have these kids. You get married, you have a husband and kids, or just a husband. And this work thing takes up 99% of your mental capacity and 110% of your emotional patience, everything. It literally sucks everything. And the question is, how do you stay balanced, therefore, if you have all of these things, this work, this family, yourself, interest, if you happen to have interest. And Anne and I were in the company together from the time she's there as long as I was. And she was always like a step ahead of me in just about everything. She was on the sales side, I was on the engineering side, and she was always a management layer above me. And we actually never worked for each other until the very end, but we would be on panels together, women panels or whatever panel. And we would always, before the panel, she'd say, "How are things going?" And I'd say, "Yeah, it's really bad, I didn't see my kids for 3 days, or I've been traveling, or I missed Melissa's, or whatever the heck it is, thing, which, some presentation or something, and my sister had to go, or her father had to go, or whatever the heck it is." And so you're managing the kids' remote control, right? You call in the morning at 7 o'clock and say, "Are you dressed? Did you eat?" Then you get your husband on the phone, "Is she dressed to tea?" That kind of, what do you put on? So you're managing remote control, and then there's some days when you're in the audience of this play that you're saying, "What the hell am I doing here? This is not the most important thing in my life today." And you want to be there at work, saying, you call in the office, "Did the numbers come in?" Okay, so Anne said, so we would say, "I have an F day or an A day," or this is an F day. And most of our days were C's to F's. We never got above a C. And finally, she said to me, "I figured out the solution. We are thinking about this in the wrong time span. We're trying to do it now. We're trying to actually balance this thing daily. Like every day, I need to balance my life every day." And she said, and now I've adopted this as my own, we're balancing our life over life. And so I missed a ton of stuff with my kids. I miss a ton of stuff with my husband. I miss a ton of stuff at work. I miss a ton of stuff with me personally. There's thousands of books that are stacked up in my house that I haven't read. There is a mile that I didn't run. There is I was in Venice and I didn't see anything except for the hotel. There's many places I didn't see. But over time, it'll be okay. Over time, I'll see more places. I'll take a couple of days. My kids will be okay. Work will be okay. So the way that I now approach it is I balance it over time, and I try not to actually get it perfect in short bursts, because there's no way to do it, because you just run yourself into the ground. The other thing I do is ending up kind of where we started out, is I've actually learned to eliminate a lot of crap from my life. I just don't, I just don't care about it anymore. There are certain things, so the Republican presidential primaries. My son walks into my house, and he will turn on the TV, and he will watch these things, all types of them. I watch none of it. It's more noise than more noise without content yet than I can possibly do. So I don't, by the way, I think that you guys should listen to it, don't get me wrong, but I know my path is set, so I don't really have to learn a lot about what Rick Santorum thinks or what Newt Gingrich thinks, or probably Mitt Romney. I would learn a little bit about what he thinks. But these other guys, Michelle Bachmann, this is all noise that I actually. By the way, the Democrats have noise too. Don't get me wrong. But what I'm saying is that I actually just say, okay, I'm not going to be bothered with it, and I just can't fit it all in, and I try not to. And I'm totally fine missing days of stuff. My kids will email me and say X, Y, Z died, and I said, really? When?
Whitney.
Two weeks ago. Like, really? I didn't even catch it. I didn't know Whitney died, by the way. I didn't know Whitney. But I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I actually try to eliminate, because it just really does confuse me, and it burdens me.
Now, if your son and daughter, Melissa and Malcolm, were sitting here, and I will not put your niece on the spot, what would they say about you that might surprise us?
I'm mean. Correct? They would say I'm mean. By the way, they say they love me madly.
Yeah.
My son said it to me the other day, and it actually it really shook me for about 3 months. He said, Mom, you're the meanest person I know. Remember? I said, oh my God, this is horrible, horrible. And I asked him, I took it in and I thought about it, and then I asked him, and he said to me, we love you madly. You're just like, I am mean. I'm obviously not abusive or not. What he means is that I actually don't mince words a lot with my kids. They'll say, or my nieces, my kids, they'll say, I'd like you to meet Paul. And Paul will sit down, and after Paul leaves, he'll say, what do you think about Paul? I'll say he's a jerk. By the way, I think. Your call at the end of the day. But if you ask me what I thought about him, I can tell you. So now I'm trying to fix this a little bit. Am I getting better? A little bit. Because I don't want to be mean. I want to. So there is a way to say there is a way to say it without, crushing the people. That's what I'm trying to figure out a way to do it. So that's what they'll say. They'll also say that I'm nice.
Okay.
At the same time. Pretty generous.
I have a kind of random question for you. I think each of us in our own private time has an alter ego. Mm-hmm. This other person who, had she not ascended to be the CEO of Xerox, would have done X.
Teaching. For sure. No doubt. I would have taught, and I thought it would have been younger kids, but I would have taught like mid-teenagers. It'd be, 13, 14, 15, 16, for sure. The other alter ego is I am extremely introverted. I prefer, so if you give me a chance, I will be quiet. And I'll go to a place and just love the fact that somebody else is talking and somebody else is taking control of the situation, and it's just like the best thing in the world. You need, and very much so. And that comes out. I read a lot, and these things that I bike a lot, I run a lot. So these are all things that you do with no one.
Right. Now, I did promise that I'd open the floor to questions, but before we transition it to questions that people have, you mentioned your mother, and I read something where you said, and you actually just mentioned this too, that your mother told you that you have to give more than you've taken away from this world. And I want to know, what do you feel like you have given to this world?
I think it's not over yet. So I mean, really, I think that right now I'm about even, or I'm a little bit behind. The world has given me more than I have given back right now. I'm a little bit behind. So it'll take me 20 years before I can actually balance it out. But the reason why I'm not at 100% deficit is that I do believe that I can actually change things. And I think that the position that I have allows me, who would give a hoot about what I thought about education if I weren't the CEO of Xerox? Right, so, or about anything, really, if I didn't have this bully pulpit that's been given to me by, so I actually take the position, and I've gotten more comfortable with this. Because when I first became the CEO, I was nervous about overreaching overreaching the position. But then I learned that, no, this is part of the position, part of it is this, right? So I actually work hard on understanding education, our system of education, not higher education, the system that we have today, and trying to, outside of the political infrastructure, because when I first got involved with this, I tried to get involved with, teachers, and I mean, teachers are very important, but the structure under which they're hired and managed is a big political quagmire mess. So at the end of the day, the customers are the students. So I try to bypass all of this other stuff and get directly to the students, and we've lined our company up that way, my personal time that way. I'm really engaged in that. The other thing is I think that we have a responsibility to take care of the people closest to us, as if no one else can take care of them. So I'm very successful. My brother is successful. My sister, financially, we're very successful financially. My sister is not successful financially. She's successful in every other way. So my sister can want for nothing in her life. And that doesn't mean that she lives in a mansion, but literally she's a sociologist, a social worker, and she should be able to do that without worry. And our kids should be able to pursue their love, positive love, without worry. My nieces, without worry. There's a circle. Those are the kinds of, and if I can create one more, so if I have one and everybody takes one and create a good one, then we have a shot at actually making the world like a better place. So this whole idea of people closest to you, you can't let them go too far away. You can't let them kind of mess up. And then everybody else who you can help, you have to try to help. And I don't mean help give.
Yep.
It's not like, it's not this kind of, these people need. It's not that at all. It's about enabling. It's really that you can enable.
Thank you. I know we have more questions, so
I'll just pass the mic. You can-
Aaliyah will pass the mic for anyone who has any questions.
I was just curious, there was a very interesting article last week in the New York Times about Goldman Sachs. Just wondered what your reflection was.
I know Goldman Sachs fairly well, by the way. It's a good institution. Lloyd. And so I won't speak about what happened specifically at Goldman Sachs. But remember I said earlier, you've got to watch the people? When you get a person or a group of people who actually hate you as much, dislike you or disrespect you so much that they would bring you down the institution, pay attention. And so that's all I would say, pay attention. And I would look deeper at what the heck is happening, and I'm sure that this is what's happening. Look deep at what's happening, make sure, but by the way, there are always people on the edges. By the way, trust me, as many people on the edges, good side as bad side, but most of the time people actually operate those edges really close to home. And when you get a disruption like this, it's important that you step back and say, let's take an assessment of what the hell is going on. And I think that that's what they have to do. They have to step back and not dismiss it and say, well, this is just a disgruntled guy. And yeah, he probably was just a disgruntled guy, but there's something else going on, and I would be suspicious till the end. By the way, whenever I'm not suspicious, I say this all the time, your instinct, you have these things, you learn all of this stuff in school, and then there's this thing called your instinct, that most of the time it goes against what they taught you in school the first when you first see it, dump the school stuff and follow your instinct. Whenever I don't do that, whenever I don't do it, particularly about people, I blow it like you wouldn't believe. It happens all the time. And I sit back and I say to myself, you did it again. You did it again. You saw this person, there was something that didn't jive right, and then you say, no, but I looked at it, it's all fine, and then I called and it was fine, and then a year later you say, goodness gracious, it's right in front of me, all the time. So this thing about the blink instinct is what? So I think Goldman's gonna just have to, take an assessment. It's a good firm though, so a long-standing firm, so it should be able to correct itself.
Okay, I got my degree in engineering as well, and in undergrad, it was 80% men and 20% women, which made dating really hard. So, with that in mind, as well, obviously, more importantly, how do you feel like the government could do, what could the government do to have more women in engineering, and as well as business as well?
I think this is significantly less about the government. By the way, I would like the government to do nothing about this. This is, whenever the government gets involved in problems like this that have to do directly with business, we get a whole bunch of legislation that ends up being legislation. I think this is about leaders and leadership. Obviously, the government can do something. I mean, there is reporting, there is structure that the government can put in place, but that doesn't, I mean, we've had that for how many years? Probably 40 years, right? We still have this big gap. I think this is all about you guys and business leaders or business infrastructure. So you guys, one of the reasons why there's 80%, 20% is go back to high school and then to grade school, and then to, right before grade school. We are not encouraging, incenting, pulling, working with, inspiring, whatever the heck it is, the women out there. So I can get the government to do that. The kids aren't going to follow the government at all. They'll follow you. They absolutely would follow you. So get engaged with programs. There's National Academy Foundation, there are organizations all over that kids who are 8 or 9 or 10 just want a human being that's not 50 to talk to them about what to do and to show them that it's cool and exciting, and they wear T-shirts, and I'm a real person. A real person is doing this stuff, and it's exciting. And I think that the biggest thing that we can do is actually excite these people and show them what the possibilities are. And by the way, it's not only in engineering. It could be in teaching. It could be in whatever it is that you're passionate about. Most of the time, they spend their time bouncing a ball, kicking a ball, hitting a ball, or watching the television. And that's really, so we know what's on the television. If you watch the television, you become a criminal. That's what you see most of the time, right? A criminal or a cop, right? Those are two things. Either a criminal or the guy who's catching the criminal. And there's not a show at all about what it's like to be a positive business person. Is there a show like that on TV? I don't think so. Yeah, but the women would not feel as thrilled about Mad Men as you are. And I've never seen Mad Men. All I know is that it's so I just think what I would say, and this is the back to the problem. If you look at the problem like the big, you're going to get so discouraged. What the hell? What can the government do? But you shouldn't look at the problem that way. You should look at the problem as the small. There's a school. What's the school around here? The grade school around here. Have you been to it? You should go. I'm serious. Just go and knock and say to the teacher, guess what? I have an hour a week. What can I do? Yes.
Absolutely love your definition of success over time, or given a time perspective. I'm curious, as a CEO of a public company where the board or shareholders, their time span is usually on a monthly or quarterly basis. As you're transitioning a huge, well-known company from more of a product sales, I'm guessing it'll still be product sales, but into the services arena, how do you strike that healthy balance between, short-term earnings, short-term results, and trying to reverse engineer this great company to 3-5 years into being a leading product services?
Yeah. One is communication. 1, 2, and 3 is communication. If people don't understand what you're doing, they have a lot of shots to ask questions, stupid questions, right? So the big thing here is to explain what you're doing, to be very clear, very open, very transparent about what you know, so what the goal is, and how you think the company looks and what the value is at that point, and a rough idea of what the path is. And make sure you have to adjust it, but stick with it. And not try to jump ahead, not try to make it easy, make your life easier in the short term. That will forsake the long term. So the first thing I've done is, I spend all my time actually talking about what we're doing and telling people what progress is. That's one. You said in your thing, board and shareholders. If you have a good board, your board is not thinking about quarters. If they are, you should fire the damn board. That's not what they do. What I do is I think about quarters. What my board does is should think like a little bit more like my longer-term shareholders, which is over time we're making a set of transitions and it will pay off over time. You know what's interesting about this, though? Something's happened in the last couple of years with the market since 2008. The market used to be a fairly good indicator in the reasonable time, 2 years, 3 years, of progress. Enterprises, progress, now it's not at all. It's interesting, if you look at how many longer-term shareholders actually hold a public company stock. It used to be 80%, now it's 40 or 50%. Traders, the world has turned into computers. People who you don't even know. So you have to be really careful about how you balance the customers that you have. You have a customer that's the customer who buys your service or products, a set of employees and the community that you live in, and shareholders. And in 2006, 2007, when the market went crazy, we all started talking about shareholders to the point where we actually thought employees, we never thought this, I can say very proudly, were totally dispendable. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm going to buy company A, company B. I'm going to put them together, and I'm going to gut half a company A, half a company B, and I'm going to create this new company that's doing something that's only what A and B did. And the way that I get more money out of this enterprise is by firing half the employees. And by the way, when you say that, the shares go up. Watch it. Say you're going to have a layoff, and any company who says they're going to have a layoff, the share price goes up in the next couple of days. And that's part of this kind of, I think, it's the bad side of modern technology. What you have to do is balance it. I feel very little pressure, like none, in achieving short-term results and delivering the long-term strategy. None. We have to deliver short-term results. By the way, the short-term results that we put up are short-term results that show that we're a good company or an improving company. But I never feel as though, my God, I got to take a bunch of money out of R&D because my investors really, none of that stuff. They understand the business model. If they don't really like it, they don't invest. If they do like it, they do invest. And it's all about delivering the results so that they can stay patient enough to win in month 4 or month 5. But I never really feel this, oh my God, I got to meet a quarter, therefore I have to do, sell the building, or that's not something that we really get into too much. Even though meeting the quarter is always hard, and it's always to the last day. Never. I haven't had one yet where in January I know that I'm okay in the first quarter. Never. So.
To piggyback on that question, given that Xerox has transformed itself into a company where 48% of revenue and 51% of profits are from services, what's your vision going forward for maybe the next 3 to 5 years?
If you just look at the growth rates of the two lines of business, we'll be at 70-30 in 5 years. Not because we're wholly uninterested in technology, it's just because technology is growing at a rate slower. The industry, that part of the industry is growing at a slower rate than the services business. So we'll definitely be a more heavily weighted services business from a revenue perspective and from a profitability perspective. But the margins on our business, the operating margins, gross margins, completely different business models. So the operating margins on our business, we should be able to get an operating margin in our tech business that's as high or higher than our services business. Because as you know, businesses are easy to run in two ways. One is, two ways that I love. One is when they're zooming up, and the other one is when they're zooming down. When they're zooming down, it's all about cost and expense management. Now, our tech business is not zooming down, but it's very well defined. You know, the field is very well defined, the competitors are very well defined, and the trends are not as well defined, but because the rest of it is well defined, I can change fast. And so we'll be able to have a very profitable and segment-specific growing service, technology business, and overall our services business will expand and grow, for sure. So it'll be more revenue and more profit from services and from technology, and therefore more employees as well.
Follow up on that. So how do you respond to skeptics who don't really subscribe to the idea that technology is going to grow in the range of -1% to 1%?
Yeah, then all you can do, you know, this is another thing I just love when you, everybody can have a question about everything. They all have the right to have a question about everything. So I don't respond to skeptics. I respond to skeptics the same way I respond to believers. This is the strategy. This is what we can tell you about the industry and the industry trends. This is what we can tell you about the competitive marketplace. This is what we can tell you. And then if they believe that we can't grow, by the way, we may not be able to. You know, at the end of the day, all of my assumptions, you know, after hiring Bain, McKinsey, and all of the guys at Goldman and JP Morgan, all of the guys that you guys are going to go work for, who were paying millions of dollars to give us all of this insight. So you pull it all together and you come up with a theory of the case. Our theory may be wrong. I doubt it, by the way. But I can't actually respond to somebody who says, you know, I just think, I have a feeling that your theory is wrong. I said, well, and then, okay, go for it.
Last question.
Let's do two more. Okay, go. You, and then I'll get somebody over there.
I was just curious how you think about future acquisitions, whether you would issue stock or whether you're only looking for cash.
In the near term, as we acquire, we'll use cash. Primarily because when we acquired ACS, we issued a huge amount of shares. I think a billion shares. It was a huge amount of shares. I don't think our shareholders right now would be really comfortable with me issuing a whole lot more. Plus, it's not necessary. We generate enough cash on a operating cash flow basis, more than enough cash to actually do the kind of acquisitions that we want. We actually are buying, we're buying back shares, as you know. We've been buying back shares for the last 3 years. So it would be a little bit odd to issue stock. At this price, the best thing that we could do with our shares is buy them, because they're very undervalued by any metric. So we're racing to buy as many as we can back, take them off the marketplace.
You spoke about Xerox's culture accepting and even celebrating difference, and I'm curious, what specifically do you think other organizations can learn from Xerox about, you know, encouraging this type of culture?
You know, I think a lot of companies actually are making progress in this area. Some very, very good companies. You know, I think it's time. People, so if you're sitting in this chair, you don't want to hear this answer, right? You want it to be fixed tomorrow. But, you know, we have 130,000 people at Xerox. Before we bought ACS, we had 60,000 people. 60,000 people over 55, 70 years. We kind of, obviously all of them weren't here from the beginning, or else they would be dead by now. We kind of learned how we want to live. And so it's no longer, we have quotas for everything. So when we hire, we have women quotas, men quotas, black quotas, Hispanic quotas, gay quotas. We have a quota for everything. Very rarely do we hire to a quota. We just go out and find a person, and then at the end of the day, we look at it and say, oh my God, we screwed up. We didn't hire enough Hispanics or so on, and then we have to do. So we've grown up in this idea that we've grown up there, so we're very comfortable. The people who recruit, a lot of them look just like you look. So it's just a natural kind of a thing. And the reason why I'm saying this is that in the beginning, programs help. You know, quotas help. In the beginning, people always say to me, do you think you should have them? I said, for organizations that don't make progress, absolutely. I mean, you go to places they don't have women and you say, okay, it's a good idea to hire women. You come back 5 years and there are no more women. I say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to, at every single level, we're going to hire women. And by the way, you can't fire them. Your success is based on, that works round one, round two. That works for a little while. It doesn't work structurally. If that's what you're going to do structurally, it's a disaster. So after a while, you get this kind of symbiotic relationship between the people and the goals. And you have enough of the people who just hire people who look like them. Generally, people hire people who look like them or they're comfortable with. And so we have enough to balance it out and make it such that we don't have to have a quota. By the way, there are places that we are Hispanics. We are way below where we should be, and we're still trying. So we are, we're going to probably do the quota thing at some point because we just don't have enough of a mass to actually make it, to have the flywheel start. So I say the way that organizations do it is understand it's a journey. This is not like on Tuesday we're going to actually fix the diversity problem. I get this all the time. Can you give me the program that you use to fix the diversity problem? Yeah. 20 years of many different programs, trying really hard, not accepting failure, literally keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. And with all that, we're about 40% of the way there. So, thank you very much.
Thank you all for joining me and welcoming Ms. Burns to Columbia Business School. On behalf of all of us here at CBS, we'd like to offer you a small token of our appreciation.
I have a desk full of this stuff.
This one is a leather-bound USB cord engraved with Columbia Business School.
Okay, thank you very much.
And keeping with technology.
I'm proud.
Come on up,
My
don't
knee,
be shy.